There's still a lot to do, especially on a functional level, because the new A8 is a vehicle that is mainly shaped by software. It includes many different features. We're still hard at work, and there's some way to go, but I'm convinced that we will manage.
The new Audi shape has been approved by the management board. This one-on-one clay model allows the designers to view their design in 3D for the first time.
This clay model accompanies us in our development process for about 1.5 years, and the final model, the so-called design freeze model, is then made of plastic.
Despite the computer animations, a model is an important tool in order to determine the design. It can be changed again and again during the design process, either by machine or by hand.
The manual modeler focuses on translating the designer's two-dimensional sketch to a three-dimensional model in order to bring the designer's idea to life.
Automotive design is also a competition, where at the end of the day, only one of the designs wins. Philipp Römers and his team won the contract for the A8. Together with Mark Lichter, he went from Volkswagen to Audi.
Of course, it's great to see how such a design develops from sketch to model to an actual car. And it's also great to see a car with our design driving around one day. That's something very special.
Once a design has been approved, it is then refined. Despite all the digital tools, this is still done by drawing lines by hand and with the sensory experience with the model. The new Audi flagship is not only the evolution of the A8 model line, it also introduces a new design language that will characterize the models to come. It's a demanding task Mark Lichter and his team have to master. At the same time, in the Audi plant in Neckarsulm, in the so-called pre-series center, employees are building the first prototypes. What will later be fully automated during series production is done manually here. For the first time, the body is manufactured via composite construction. Here, it has to be proven if what the engineers developed on their computers can actually be built. Steel, aluminium, magnesium and a carbon back wall must be joined together. Welding, screwing, riveting, gluing, all the joining technology available today is used in the new A8. Audi has a lot of experience with bodies that are made of different materials, but for the A8 many of these techniques are used for the first time.
This wheelhouse is a good example for the various joining techniques. Steel can be joined with steel using the oldest and cheapest method, resistance spot welding. Inside the cavity, where it can't be reached from behind, it is screwed together with so-called flow drill screws. There's also riveting, which you can see here. This process doesn't require heat and therefore doesn't warp the material.
Of course, there can be disturbances in the early phase of development. Some parts may have too big of a tolerance. Others do not meet the quality requirements yet. Each shift starts with obligatory meetings where the workers aim to eliminate the sources of error. Even the slightest inaccuracy can quickly prolong the development of the whole car, which would be rather unfortunate.
If the parts are not suitable for construction, we have to cease production immediately, and as soon as the new parts are available, we will continue the production process accordingly.
Contrary to the other spots up there, these rivets aren't evenly distributed.
In Audi's light channel in Ingolstadt, technicians and designers are developing the head and rear lights of the A8. In recent years, lighting has become an important stylistic aspect in automotive design.
We have the same rhythm here. Perfect.
Freshly developed technologies constantly provide the designers with new possibilities. One of these elements is the OLED, an extremely thin light source that's ideal for illuminating small, narrow areas. Cesar Montada-Roura and Stefan Berlitz are responsible for lighting at Audi.
Our creations should be immediately recognizable on the street, as part of the Audi brand, but also as to what kind of vehicle is moving towards you. The development effort is truly considerable. In order to develop such systems, we have to start years in advance. We start with basic research. We were among the first manufacturers to use OLED, and our efforts were a boost for the whole automotive industry, and all of a sudden, it was available everywhere. During the development phase itself, there are a lot of tests, where we have to do many test drives on the road. But here, in the light channel, we can see beforehand whether the lighting fits and if all the functions go together well. This all happens before we actually do the test drives. It requires a lot of adjustments to create the ideal lighting for our customer.
Of course, in the development of the A8, the customer's wishes need to be taken into consideration too. They are constantly being scrutinized in numerous studies.
Our customers often prefer to drive with high beam, which is why we provide them with an ultra-modern light assistance system, matrix headlamps, where they always have high beam without actually blinding anyone. For better visibility, they get laser headlights. There is another exciting element on top that includes our light animation for the wow effect. Right on my first day when I started at Audi in February 2014, the decision about the A8 was made. On my second working day, I explained my strategy directly to the management board. There were 5 design models, one of which I had already done with a small team of people in Wolfsburg, and there were 4 alternative models that were done in Ingolstadt. These 4 models have been developed in a year, and I had to come up with a design model in a very restricted time period. In the end, I was able to convince the management board with my design because it represented the contents of the strategy and the brand values best.
Internally, the development was codenamed D5. The D describes the segment of large sedans, and the 5 represents the 5th Audi model in this segment. The very first of these models was the Audi V8 from 1988, when the manufacturers from Ingolstadt just set off for the luxury segment. The V8 was followed by the first A8 with its famous aluminium space frame, the world's first mass-produced vehicle with a self-supporting aluminium body. Lightweight construction was also in the focus of the current A8. However, the demands on the body have increased considerably, as it must be able to accommodate several batteries and a full hybrid drive. In addition, the requirements for comfort and occupant protection also increased. Audi therefore decided to develop a body structure made of several materials with differing thicknesses. Combining such a multitude of materials with each other is an immense challenge during production.
The new A8 should be a complete revolution. Especially in the luxury segment, a lot can only be achieved through the human factor that senses it. The A8 must radiate prestige. That's utterly important to me. Does what we decided 2 or 3 years ago actually fit into today's world? And will the customers accept it the way we want it to be?
The developers spent more than 4 years on this project, an enormous task, as the A8 was created in a time of probably the greatest upheaval for the company. Digitization, electrification, and piloted driving are only 3 buzzwords that shape this period of time. Never before had so many new systems been integrated into a car, and the A8 must set standards in each field.
This Audi A8 stands for the journey of the 4 rings. The journey into the next decade and into a new era of our brand.
The challenges are enormous. For the first time, the ZFAS, a central computer, is used to control many of the car's electronic functions. In addition, there's an active chassis that permanently scans the road with the help of the front camera, and in fractions of a second adjusts the spring damper system accordingly. Also thanks to the 48-volt power system. A steering system that is both connected to the front and rear axles. A hybrid drive that supports the engine, and much more. All these systems had to be developed made ready for series production and tested throughout millions of kilometers. It was an enormous task at extremely high standards for the entire development team.
There are so many technical tidbits it would take too long to list them. The car is prepared for pilotless driving, level 3, and the chassis, which includes EABC. It's basically an active chassis with air suspension and the first of its kind in the world.
For Audi, the A8 represents the dawn of a new era for the automobile, and the form is intended to instantly show this via its design. Mark Lichter was in charge of this task. Since 2014, he's been Audi's head designer. There's no sign of relaxation at the design centers, though. The completion of the car's interior is running at full steam. It must be determined how this luxury car shall be operated in the time to come.
This is the first time that there's a completely new operating logic behind everything. Before, everything was remote controlled, but in the new A8 we will switch to a touch-based operation. This is a new challenge for us, but we took it on with great pleasure. We had a lot of fun. It's always great for a designer to be able to do everything from scratch. And we also learned a great deal in the area of user experience.
Despite the rapidly growing digitalization, classical handicraft is still in demand.
With taping, I can try out proportions very effectively on a two-dimensional level. I can create tension through lines and translate everything into CAD.
With this clay model called the seat box, the designers can explore the spatial effect of the surfaces. Even in our digital age, the physical impression plays an important role, especially in the luxury segment.
I need a physical model in which I can sit in order to experience the spatial effect of the interior. That's something we haven't come up with in the virtual world yet, which is why I need this model.
Light is more and more often used as a design tool in the interiors of cars.
For us, light as a design element is the perfect means of creating ambiance. We can do this with colored light, but also with certain light elements, like this precise light that you see here, or the ambient light as we call it, with which you can make a switchboard seemingly float.
In luxury cars, customers expect technical innovations and exquisite materials in connection with workmanship of the highest quality. Coming up with the right composition is the task of the color and trim department. On the one hand, fashion and zeitgeist plays a major part here. On the other hand, it's about colors and materials that must still be somehow en vogue even years later. Simona Falcinella, head designer at Color and Trim, was handed this sensory task.
I really have the feeling that you can feel how many people put attention, care, professionality to this product and enjoy it while you're driving.
Simona Falcinella and her team must feel what customers all over the world expect from an A8. A miscalculation at this point would have vital negative consequences.
I would imagine if the color and the material is wrong, you immediately have a feeling, a perception of being in the wrong place, having some kind of discomfort, maybe. Not really physical, but really feeling, perceive something like a no that is jumping out of the equation. Yeah.
I feel so close to you. But if you really knew, were you gonna tell me? Were you gonna tell me? Were you gonna tell me? You thought I knew. Were you gonna tell me? Were you gonna tell me? Were you gonna tell me?
the Arctic Circle in northern Sweden. Timo Strutz and his team are preparing the test car. For the first time, the engineers will check whether the complex electromechanical chassis works smoothly at temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. The chassis and electronics of the new Audi A8 are implanted in its predecessor. This is common practice in automotive development, as the use of so-called technology carriers means that test vehicles are available at an early stage of development, and these cars do not need to undergo expensive camouflage. The car that already cooled down in the night is driving out of the garage. This lowrider show is in fact a serious inspection of the car's suspension systems. All functions of the chassis must work reliably on the test site.
It may look funny when we make the car bounce, but this is a test sequence that allows us to keep the vehicle repeating the same movements. We can examine how the currents, the acoustics or dynamics change due to the cold.
The chassis control of the A8 is technically very complicated. Due to the high voltage of 48 volts, the electronic components react in a flash. The front camera detects bumps at an early stage, and the chassis controls react accordingly, unnoticed by the passengers. Even wobbling movements of the car, for example in curves, are compensated by the system at lightning speed. Since each wheel is controlled individually, Audi is able to offer a feature that reduces the consequences of a side impact by raising the body on the affected side. This multitude of safety-relevant technology is tested during endless test drives in all climatic areas of the world, until everything works reliably in all conditions. In addition, the vehicle must not make any strange noises.
The main purpose of this track is to detect any noise in the area of the suspension or the axles. This may be a squeaking or some kind of breathing noise from an air spring or damper, or even from our actuators.
At 7 o'clock in the morning, Ferdinand Hartinger and his team configure the car systems in the garage. After that, the prototype has to drive in the icy desert and prove that its complex technology works perfectly, even under these extreme conditions.
And how does it feel when you count the steer?
The rear seems quite stable.
The steering parameters are adjusted repeatedly until the developers are happy with the result.
Our customers will be surprised by the maneuverability of the vehicle. It doesn't feel as if they were sitting in such a big car, but it gives them the agility and the maneuverability of smaller vehicles. That's the great thing about it. In such situations, there is a function that turns the rear axle steering to 0, so that the rear of the vehicle can be handled very precisely and predictably by the driver.
Another development goal here in the far north of Europe is the perfect coordination of all driving stability systems. When does the ESC start to intervene? Does the Quattro drive react as desired? And do the systems communicate flawlessly with each other? And how do the electronic components react to the Arctic cold? The central computer alone, the ZFAS, which bundles all the software of the driver assistance systems, is uncharted territory altogether.
Our error log shows that there was a problem with the central locking. We will check the wiring following the respective diagram and see if we can locate the error somehow.
At the Audi plant in Ingolstadt, the whole world can basically be simulated. Temperatures of -30 to +55 degrees are displayed at the so-called climate roll test bench. The engineers check their systems once again.
Usually a car is tested here for 2 weeks, the first week in warm or hot temperatures and the second week in cold temperatures.
Whatever wasn't possible in the Arizona desert or the snow of the Arctic Circle is made possible here. Going 250 at 50 degrees Celsius or an ascent at -30. In these laboratory conditions, all components of the car can be tested extensively.
I would suggest we warm up the engine now, and as soon as it's warm, we start the ascent. We approach the vehicle, unlock it, start the car, and drive off. We start slowly, especially in the low temperature, so that all the lubricants can get up to temperature, and then we check the heating of the air conditioning, the rear window, and windscreen heating. Everything is scrutinized very closely.
You say it, we're falling like stars.